For this task, I want to have a look at how we can make a mold for a flower piece of jewellery that might be cast in pewter or in resin. Okay, so for this, we're going to start off by making the part first. And as you can see here, I've made a very simple mold of a flower that I've drawn out. And then from that, we've been able to then make a mold which looks something like that. So it has a recess in it that the pewter could be cast in, and then we have a lid that goes over the top of that. Okay, so we're trying to create this part here at the end of the day, which will be the casing for the mold to be made in. Okay, so and probably milled out on a milling machine of some sort, and then used with a pewter cast. Right, to start off with, I'm going to start off with a new part studio. Or you would start the new sketch. I'm going to start off on the top work plane, so click on top and top like so. I'm going to start with a new sketch on that. Okay, and we'll start with by using the ellipse tool. So we've dropped down from the circles and picked the ellipse tool. I'm going to start from the center here and just drag out an ellipse like so. Now I want this to be about 40 millimeters, so 40, okay, and then a width of about 15, so that'll do that. Then I can actually type in the values, so 40 by 15, okay. We can see our values there. Let's untick that tool, then we can see the values. So 40 by 15 is what we're after for this, okay. I'm going to pattern this, so I'm going to go to this tool here, which is a circular pattern. You may see it as the linear pattern, and then there are tools underneath it. You want the circular pattern tool, okay, so click on that. And all you need to do is to go to the center, to the shape, and just click on the outside of the shape. And you'll get a mouse appearing like so with a green thing. And when you're just happy about this, about that, just press once and it will then create the shape. But what you'll notice that in the middle, there is a 3x in the middle, which we can drag out. So if we wanted to actually change this to a different value, we could double click on this and make this into 5 petals, pairs of petals for us, yeah. Or we could have 4, which of course will repeat over each other, so be careful with that because that will look a bit odd. But for this particular one, I only want 3 petals, so we'll leave it at 3 petals that's been created. And all that's done is taken the first shape and just redrawn it so there are 3 parts that are evenly spread out. It works out the angle that it needs for that. Okay, brilliant. With that still live, I'm going to go to my Extrude tool. Okay. And it's going to try and extrude the shape. Now, because we have all these lines in the middle of it still, it's missing out the middle part, so we're just going to click on that to say we want to include that in the extrude. Okay, and if we look at the depth of it, you can see it's done the default one of 25 millimeters, which is way too thick for our part, so we're going to change that to 8 millimeters. Okay, and there we have our part created there. Right, I'm going to click on the green tick because I'm happy with that, and there we have our basic shape there. Okay. I'm going to now just put a fillet going around the edge of this shape here. So I'm going to take my fillet tool. By default, that comes up as 5 millimeters, so we'll reduce that down to 1 millimeter because that's way too big. So 1 millimeter, and then I'm just going to click on the edge of the top part of the shape here, just to round off those edges. Just go around each of the petals there to give them a nice rounded edge to them. Okay, and then green tick. There we go. Okay, that's looking a little bit more realistic. Okay, so the surface looks a bit flat at the moment, so we're going to try and actually add something to that. So I'm going to click on the top surface here, okay, because I want to put a new sketch on that top surface. So click on Sketch there, and that will then create a sketch that's resting on that top surface. Now you can see the plane that's ready for it to work on that, and we'll switch our view to top so that we're looking straight at it. Okay, I'm going to take my circle tool, center point circle, move to the center of the origin and drag out. And I want this to be probably about 15 millimeters. So 15, and there we have the circle of diameter 15 ready for us. Okay, and whilst that's still live, I'm going to go to my extrude tool again, and this time we're going to remove. Okay, but how far do we want to remove? We only want it to remove down to 1 millimeter for this, 1 millimeter. Okay, and that'll give us a little bit of a recess in the top of our of our flower there, okay, which looks quite nice there. Okay, cool, brilliant. So that's our flower done there. Okay, we can name this part as well. So where it says part 1 here, I'm going to right click on that and go to rename and just name that as flower. Okay, flower. Brilliant. Okay, next bit, we need to think about the block that this is going to work in. So if we remember on the first one that I showed you, that had a block that was drawn around it. Okay, this block here, and that's going to sit around it as if it's actually been molded in it. So to do that, I'm going to leave this in place, but we're going to create a new part that's going to go over the top of this. So we're going to swing to our top work plane, okay, top view, and click on sketch. So we're clicking on our top plane. I'm going to take my center point rectangle tool. Remember there are 2 here. You want the center point rectangle. Start from the center here and then drag out. It needs to be big enough that it covers over the flower. So I think probably 60 by 60 is probably going to be big enough for me. 60 by 60. Okay, that gives me a nice sort of mold shape there. Okay, 60 by 60. You could do 100 by 100 as long as it is centered over the flower there. Okay. Next bit, we need to extrude this. Now, be careful when you do the extrude here. We don't want to add it to the existing material, otherwise it will just join up with the flower and it'll just be a solid block, and we don't want that. So this is going to be a new block. So we're going to click on new here. Okay, and the depth of it, I think we can probably do that at 15 millimeters will be enough. That'll be thick enough because the flower is already 8 millimeters. So 15 millimeters will be fine for that. Okay, 15 millimeters, green tick. And it appears that our flower has been lost, but really it's actually just on the underside of our block here. It's inside the block. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is we'll rename this part 2. We're going to rename that as block. For the moment, block. Okay. Right now, so now we need to try and make this intersect with each other, because at the minute it's not intersect, to subtract from each other. So we actually create a space within the mold that the flower will have created. So I'm going to use a tool called my Boolean tool, which is this one here. It looks like 2 circles that intersect, and that's called the Boolean tool. Okay, so you click on that. Yeah. Now it will ask you what tools you want to use for it. We want to subtract, so we need to tell it the tool and the target that we want to use, and we want to be able to keep the tool as well so we don't lose the flower. Okay, so I'm going to put a tick in keep tools. The tool that I'm going to be using is the flower, and the target is the block. Okay, so in the blue box here we're going to put in the flower, so I'll click on the name there, or I can click on the actual flower here. Yeah, find it, and then the target is going to be the block. So it's going to be this outer block here. Okay, right, and that'll subtract from that shape. Okay, so then we click green tick that. Now, what's the effect on that? Well, if you notice that sort of funny sort of hazy pattern that was here before that showed that the 2 things were sort of fighting with each other for a place has now disappeared. And if we then hide the flower, we now see that we have a recess in the block where the flower would have been. So we now have a mold for it, okay, which is quite handy. So we can use that as a mold for it. But in order to actually get pewter in this, we need some sort of channel that goes in to select that, okay, to pour the pewter in. So I'm going to go to this surface here. Now I've picked this surface because this is the entrance to the flower here. So this will be quite a good place for it to go into. So I'm going to click on that surface there. Yeah. I'm going to click on sketch, so I'm going to be sketching on that surface, okay? And we know that it's going to be on the let's see which side it's going to be. It's going to be on that part there, so we're looking straight at it there, okay? And I'm going to click on my circle tool now, and I'm going to just drag out a circle here, starting from the origin, and it's going to have a diameter of 15 mil. 15 mil, okay? Bingo. And there's a circle there, 15 mil. Okay, now I want to extrude this, so I'm going to be extruding it whilst it's still live, but I'm going to do it in a special way. So we're going to extrude, yeah, just that circle. Now when you do that by default, it thinks that you want to make it larger. We want to remove it, okay, but that's going to go all the way through the shape, and we don't want, that's way too big a channel there. So what we're going to do, we're going to do a thing called a draft. Okay, so we're going to click on this thing saying draft here. Yeah, and we can specify the degrees that it drafts and the angle that it goes in the direction. So we're going to change that to opposite direction, and you can see that's gone into a narrow part here. But we want this to be a nice narrow channel here. So you may need to fiddle around with degrees, but I think you're probably looking at about 25 degrees, and that gives us a channel coming down. It may even be 30 there. I think if you're on this side here where you're going to this part, 20 degrees will do. But if you've got the tip of the flower here, of a petal, then you'll probably need a shallower channel there. So let's try 30 degrees. Yeah, 30 degrees will work for us. So what that does, that gives us, I'll just green tick that, that gives us a channel that we can pour pewter down like a funnel going down into our mould there. Okay. All right, so that seems to work quite nicely there. So that was, just to recap, that was a depth of, well, it's 25, that's just the default one, but it's the degrees that we're after here, which is 30 degrees that's going in there, 30 degrees, and that gives us the angle of our funnel there. Brilliant. Okay, so last part we need to have a plate that's going to go on the front of this to keep the pewter in. Okay, so I'm going to do this on this work plane here, on this side here. So we're going to click on that, which is actually the bottom, because that's the reverse side of it there. Okay, I'm going to get a new sketch on that work plane. We're going to click on our center point rectangle again, and we're going to start this from the origin and just drag this out to the corners, all the way out to the corners there. So that's 60 by 60. Okay, there we have a block there. Okay, that's happy with that. We'll extrude that. Now that needs to be again a new piece, yeah, and it needs to go in the opposite direction, okay, opposite direction, going backwards, because it's behind the mold, and it only needs to be, because we're just going to be using 4mm ply for this, so 4mm, yeah, press enter, and there we have our piece there, and then green tick that, okay, so we can rename this part as plate. Yep, plate there. Okay, brilliant. So now we have 3 parts created. We have our plate, which we can hide. We have our mold here, yeah, or our block, and we have our flower here that we created to make up the parts. So we have 3 distinct parts created, all of which work together to create a mold for us. Really cool. Okay. Looking forward to seeing your results.